A very good morning to you on this 11th day of November. If you've reached us, you are on the channel called The Fifth Connection, where we are given to talking you through the storyline of the Christian scriptures, the Hebrew Christian scriptures. And this morning we are in chapter 5, and we're starting out in verse number 7. Post tenebras luc is the Latin for after darkness, light. Post tenebras luc. The only reason I know that Latin line is because as an aspirant young teacher studying for my teaching certificate, I attended your training college, and the badge that we had on our blazers carried those words, post tenebras luc, after darkness, light. Because that is what verse 7 to verse 14 is going to talk about. The writer in the first 6 verses of chapter 5 talks about sinful sacrificial ventures that believers need to be involved in verse 1 to verse 6. This idea of dying and rising, dying to the old and living for the new, the idea of dressing and donning, dressing and wearing Christ, dropping the old and dressing up with the new, dying into life. Because transformation for followers of the way has to do with nothing short of death and life and life and death. And now in verse number 7, he's going to talk about sinful violations. He's moving from sacrificial ventures, what we need to die to in order to live for, dying to the old and living for the new. Now he's going to talk about deeds of darkness, because this has to do with sinful violations. He says, don't become partners with them. Who's them? The sons of disobedience, those who are unpersuaded in verse number 6. They are the offspring of those who are unpersuaded, the sons of disobedience, given to futile vocal expressions, empty words. Now he's going to transition. He's going to say, therefore, because of this, what contaminates the futile vocal expressions that incur God's judgment upon the liver, not the organic liver in your body, but the one who lives in opposition to God. It says, don't become partners with them. On the basis of contamination, do not participate with them, because participation with them will infect you. It will rub off on you. And until you learn what it means to be inoculated against the contamination of sin and sinfulness and the fallen world in which we live, Scripture says, don't be partners. Not that you become partners once you are inoculated against these spiritual viral infections. But the idea is, don't participate. You need to keep your distance. For verse number 8 says, at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. This idea of darkness and light is an extremely powerful one. And now I want you to step through my portal, my transformation portal. Step through it, and then you're going to climb into my transport pod. And what this portal and this pod is designed to do is to take you back into the Greek-Roman mind, the Greco-Roman mind. Because unless you can get into the mindset of the audience and the author who is writing to them, you will not understand the significance of light and darkness. Do not transport a 20th century understanding into the text about what we understand of the metaphysics of light and the metaphysics of darkness. That's 20th century postmodernity that you are importing into the text. It's not there. What is there is the first century mind. Now, in order to get into the first century mind, I will suggest two things. Number one, understand what Second Temple Judaism is all about. And number two, have some understanding of Greco-Roman culture. Because we read these texts and we float right by it. And we remain in darkness, can't find our way, getting lost in the biblical text. Because as your transport portal takes you back into the Greek mind, the Greco-Roman mind, you're going to understand a couple of things here. That for Greeks, Greek culture was steeped in mythology. In other words, myths that weren't true. They had a smidgen of truth. But boy, they inculcated an understanding that was really not real. So Greeks and Romans who copied them, because that's what the Romans did, they just took over Greek culture and furthered Greek culture into the Roman Empire. They were good copiers, good imitators. And they even changed the names of the Greek gods. And so darkness and light again. In Greek mythology, you had the god of light. You couldn't guess what his name was. Something we know quite well. Phosphorus, the god of light. He is the personification of what we call the morning star. The morning star we know as the planet Venus, and it appears when? Not at dusk, but it appears at dawn. And so the god Phosphorus means light bringer or light bearer. So in the Greek mind, keep that in the back of your mind. That's the backstory. Phosphorus. Those who fish at night, who catch fish, and I live in the bay, and we constantly see fishermen on the shoreline. When they fish at night, they've got a phosphorus stick. And a phosphorus stick is something that you just break. You crack it, you break it, you bend it in so it breaks in two. The chemicals mix because there's phosphorus inside of that light stick. And you can see at night. Phosphorus is the name of the Greek god known as the light bringer. And then in opposition to that, you've got another Greek god, and his name is Hesperus. Phosphorus and Hesperus. Now, Hesperus is an interesting one. Hesperus is the god of the dark, right? And these are informing contexts for what we read right here in the biblical text. The writer is using light and darkness in contradistinction to each other. And verse 8 says, "For at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord." Photizo, to bring something to light, to become enlightened. Now again, let's go back into Second temple literature. The Second Temple period went from about 516 BCE, before the Christian era, 5 BCE, to about 70 AD to be exact, because 70 AD was the termination of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. Titus the Great marches his Roman army and crushes the Jewish people, sacks the city, and burns the temple to the ground. And during this, what is called the Second Temple period, from 516 BCE to 70 AD, the Jews are grappling with the text, the Old Testament text, and there is a ton of literature known as Second Temple literature, which talks about what their musings were all about, what they thought about different ideas and biblical concepts, how they grappled with life and living in relation to Torah. And so during this time, from about 500 BC to 1, the first century, you have this idea of the menorah. The menorah was a candelabra. It had 7 candlesticks burning in the temple, mounted on a stand, because light meant illumination in the Jewish mind. It had to do with enlightenment and all that is good, true, and beautiful. We're going to talk about that in a moment. The good, the true, and the beautiful. Walk as children of light. Because previously you were devoid of light, but now you are luminaries. You are light bearers in the appointed one. Who's the appointed one? The Lord. You are light in the Lord, and now the command. Conduct your life as offspring of the luminous. Walk as children of light. Jews understood what light was. The Greeks understood what light was. And now the biblical writer is using these two ideas. Darkness and light. Post tenebras luc. After darkness, light. Jesus got hold of our lives and brought light into our lives. Illumination, goodness, transparency. And now verse 9. For the fruit of light is found in all that is good, right, and true. Now that sounds very Platonic. Comes from Plato. The good, the true, and the beautiful. If you read Platonic ideals and Greek literature, you would be exposed to this concept. And Paul uses this idea. The fruit of light is found in all that is good, true, and beautiful. Good, right, and true. Philippians 4 verse 8 carries the same idea. Whatsoever things are true, honest, just, pure, lovely, if there be any virtue, if there be any praise, think on these things. Things that are good, beautiful, and true. Watch how the front story hooks onto the back story. The writer is using ideas in the Jewish/Greek mind, ideas that were very, very prominent inside of Greek literature and the Hebrew understanding of light and darkness. So verse 9, for the products of the luminous resides in what fulfills its purpose. What is good is that which fulfills its design outcome, its good purpose. Everything that God created in creation was good. Only one time did God say, not good. Man was alone. The aloneness need was not good for the male. But everything else was good because it was designed to achieve its purpose. For the products of the luminous resides in what fulfills its purpose and is in agreement with the source of all being, right? With the Lord, and moves in fidelity to the flow of reality. What is good, just, and true, good, true, and beautiful is what moves in the flow of reality. Where are you flowing this morning? Are you hiding in the dark, cowering in the darkness? Or have you come into the sunshine of God's love? Evie sings a song, step out of the shade. Step into the sunshine, step out of the shade. This is the time that you've got it made. Because God draws us out of darkness into light. We are to walk as luminaries, as lights, not lights out. I think that many Christians, lights are out. Lights are on, we say, but nobody's home. Well, what about being lights out? We are children of light. We are luminaries. Let's walk in the flow of reality as children of light. This morning, you are going to have opportunities to move as a child of light. Don't cower in the darkness. Don't cower where there are sinful violations, where the deeds of darkness persist. That's what the rest of the paragraph is going to talk about. But this morning, step into the sunshine, step out of the shade, and live for what is really real. Trust that as you go with God this day, you will enjoy Him. Enjoy the sunshine of His love on your life. Goodbye for now.